Deryck, Poole, man, you hear me?
Oh yeah, I got you loud and clear. You got
Cool,
me.
man. Welcome to Training Talk, first show in 2024, everyone. Welcome to the show. We'll have a good time tonight. Get to talk about, I don't even know if we can say it. Can we say the GUN word?
Handheld projectile slinger. I don't know. Gun. You let me know in about 5 minutes if we're still on YouTube.
So some of y'all that were tuned in with us on last month, you realize the show got kind of cut off midstream. And so apparently there's been a new policy put in place on the live events from YouTube that you cannot have firearms in that live stream at all. So I guess if the AI is able to pick up the firearm, then bye-bye stream. And so that's what happened last month if you were tuning in and saw that. But thankfully, we actually had it recorded, so we were able to get it pushed back out to YouTube. And so if you didn't get a chance to watch the show, be sure to jump in. I think that was a pretty good show finalizing out the year. But tonight, we will jump into presentation from the holster. And, this is definitely a hot button topic for Deryck and I. We've both been teaching it a long time, but at the same time, we see so many different videos of it and that kind of stuff posted online where people are doing it not just wrong, but dangerous. And so we'll kind of jump in the do's and the don'ts and all that kind of stuff with it tonight. But welcome to the show. Deryck, did it warm back up in the Florida yet?
A little bit. It was pretty bipolar. It was like we were waking up and it was like 40, 50 degrees down here. And then by lunchtime, it was like nice and humid, but still in the 60s. And like everything was sweaty and rusting. And, we were up and down, up and down, up and down. But I think it's rained pretty much every day for the last 10 days or so.
Yeah, we got kind of pretty crazy in Louisiana, with the cold temperatures. I'd sent you the pictures of like the icicle tree that we made and all that kind of stuff. It's certainly not often where we have icicles hanging off the roof where I'm walking out on the porch and, literally dodging ice that has fallen off the roof and whatnot. So thankfully today it calmed down to be more of a traditional Louisiana winter day, but I'll be glad when all those cold days are gone and we're back complaining about how hot it is. I'll take the heat all day, any day.
Same. I never complain when it gets hot. Like I moved to Florida because I wanted it to be hot. So me complaining about it makes pretty much zero sense.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. Same way.
Yeah. Hey, you posted up about a law that was just overturned or something about the post office.
I did. And so that came out of Florida. Where, and honestly, it's not even a recent case. It's an older case that made its way to an appellate court, a federal court, in the state of Florida. Ultimately, it was an employee there that worked for the post office. He carried a waste bag with a gun in it. Maybe somebody found out about it, and ultimately they came to arrest him. And so, my understanding when they tried to make an arrest, he ran, and so he was charged not just with the firearm, but he was also charged with fleeing officers when they were trying to arrest him and whatnot. And so the federal judge said that, based on the Bruin decision, that ultimately it was unconstitutional for the Florida, or not just Florida, excuse me, it's unconstitutional for the the post offices to prevent you from carrying firearms on the premises, and basically brought it back into the history of the Postal Service, how it wasn't always that guns were banned there, and I forget the exact year, but I'm wanting to say it was either the 60s or 70s is when the Postal Service started banning firearms on the premises. But if you saw in that post, that it's local to that district, right? And so, ultimately, it's not over yet. So it's not, this doesn't mean you can go out and carry in post offices. Certainly don't do that. Don't want you to get in trouble for doing that kind of stuff. But it does mean that we're starting to move in the direction where, hopefully one day, we see some sort of blanket decision that affects postal property, throughout the United States.
Yeah, and that's why I sort of brought it up, you know, because if anybody had saw it, you pointed out in your post when you posted it up that, you know, don't take this as law of the land. Like, there's plenty of other challenges, but hey, it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, it
And you, I
definitely
think
is.
you even said in your post that like that law, it has like caused you to like avoid the post office a whole lot and spend more money at UPS box stores and stuff like that. Same here. You know, I can't tell you the number of times I've been like, oh, I got to go to the post office, and I'm like, oh, and then because correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is I can't even be in the parking lot and take it off and put it in like my little security box underneath my seat and lock it up and go inside because I'm still on US, like on property, right?
Right, and I don't want to play attorney,
Same.
and so obviously this discussion is more for educational purposes. But yeah, I mean, under the postal codes is that my understanding is you're prohibited not just bringing it in the building, but actually having it on the property. And there was another Colorado decision a few years back that affected somebody that was on the property. And I haven't looked into it, but it's actually my understanding. Somebody was telling me about it yesterday that it ultimately, after challenges, it did not fall in favor of the person, who was challenging it through the court systems, and it was only upheld that they could prohibit, the firearm on that postal property. And so, we'll see where it goes. Like you said, it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think that in the long run, I think that somewhere like a post office will likely see that prohibition on the property or inside the building go away. I don't know. I don't know if that'll be a year from now or 20 years from now, even if that ever did become a thing. And that's kind of, why I said in the post, I've done my best to avoid it. I moved, I had a post office box for, probably, I mean, like going back to like college and stuff, because I ping ponged around, right? Every semester was a different apartment, it seemed like. So I always kept a post office box, for more of a stable address. And so I kept that same post office box and used it, up until, probably, I don't know, 5 years ago, I started transitioning over to a private mailing service, to one of their boxes. Or they were, obviously more comfortable with me coming in with guns and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely a move in the right direction. So exciting to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Like you, I avoid it. Like if I'm like I have to go to the post office, like that whole thought has to start when I'm still at the house because I'm sure you're like me. I carry my gun, you know, 97% of the time. So like it's on me like to the point where I don't even think about it. It's like
Right.
a pair of socks or wearing a t-shirt. It's like I don't even think about it. So it's like I'm driving and then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Then you start going through the list of, oh, can't go there. So it literally, to use the post office, has to start out as a conscious thought sitting at my house and then just leave the gun here.
True fact. True fact. Well, yeah. Obviously, thank you to Primary Arms Online. They are sponsoring the show tonight. Deryck Poole with his trusty hat. Here it comes. Boom. Right.
Yep.
Great store. Great store. I just pulled it up while we were sitting here. It looks like they actually have a giveaway going on the site right now that's valued over $3,500. So if you haven't checked that out, be sure to jump over to their site and check it out. Primary Arms Online. It's January 2024, and so a lot of the instructors like Deryck, and Rob, and other contributors to PDN are starting to lay out training dates and training locations throughout the country. So I've already been in discussion, with a couple of different locations, and if you are interested in bringing some of the training out to your location, certainly reach out to one of us or whoever that instructor is that you'd be interested in their hosting. We've got everything from instructors teaching, medical classes and active shooter response and, defensive handgun, defensive rifle. One of the courses I'll be out teaching this year is more for concealed carry, context of kind of parking lot safety. And so it's got a live fire component. It has a RBT, force on force component to it. But it will be a pretty good course. So I'm working on different locations right now. But if you're interested in hosting, certainly shoot us a message on one of the social media platforms or email or whatever.
And along the same lines of CCW, if you're in a state that has constitutional carry, like Florida just went, keep getting training. You know, like if you're like, well, I don't want to spend the money because it's free. You know what? You really think about it. And in fact, go to Guns for Everyone. If y'all are familiar, Edgar Antillian, and I probably said his name wrong, but Edgar runs Guns for Everyone, and they do free concealed carry classes, and they're starting to spread out and doing more around the whole United States. So head over to Guns for Everyone and find a free class. Right at the end of the class, they're like, "If you got any value to this class, please consider a donation so we can keep doing these free classes." So get some training, and you might realize, hey, uh, constitutional carry is cool, but there are some definite benefits to actually getting that concealed carry permit.
No, true fact. Always one that always comes to mind. It doesn't matter what state you're in. Is federal law prohibits you from carrying in a 1,000-foot firearm free zone, right? So that's 1,000 foot out from every angle of a school property or school sponsored function, and that blankets most municipalities, right? So I pulled up a map of New Orleans just recently, and it's like looking at it, it's easy to say that probably 50% of the entire city of New Orleans is a firearm free zone. Now, the concealed carry permit issued by your state is what gives you that exemption under federal law, and the exemption under state laws and whatnot. So that's one big reason. And then, of course, in Louisiana, we need the permit to be able to carry in restaurants that serve alcohol. We need the permit for reciprocity travel into other states. We need the permit to bypass the federal background check when, buying guns from an FFL dealer. And having the permit in Louisiana also exempts us from a completely separate law that basically turns our concealed handgun permit almost, kind of similar to a concealed weapon permit, where if you want to conceal knives or batons or any of that kind of stuff, you can, but you have to have the permit to have that exemption.
Yep. I'm getting ready to, and the reason I brought it up is because I actually have an appointment next week to renew my concealed carry permit. And somebody was asking me, well, why even bother? You teach, and I'm like, well, because I travel for one, and I would like the reciprocity when traveling outside of states that don't have constitutional carry, and then the other, driving through, I got a lot of streets around me that like go by school zones, so I'd like to be covered. Granted, I'm not speeding through school zones. I have any doubt that I'll ever get pulled over in a school zone, but why risk it?
True fact, true fact. Well, yeah, as we talked about, tonight is going to be all about presentation from the holster, ultimately while seated. We spend a lot of our lives in chairs. Deryck's in a chair right now, I'm in a chair right now, but, I've got a couple of locks in between me and the outside whatnot at the moment. And so maybe it'll let my guard down a little bit. But outside of, the office chair that kind of we're sitting in right now, inside the home, I mean, just, you drive around, it's, I live near New Orleans, New Orleans has definitely been known for different carjackings, lots of carjackings, that kind of stuff throughout. Besides the carjacking scenario that may, require the use of a firearm, even outside of that, just simply, maybe it's robberies that take place inside of parking lots, right? A lot of transitional spaces. That's where a lot of people end up getting targeted. Maybe it's not the car, it's the person, the wallet, whatever, right? But it's just, we spend a lot of, time inside of chairs at different points, Some people work, and spend a lot of times in chairs, even in a more of a, retail or public environment. You spend time sitting down in restaurants, maybe on park bench out at the public place, right? Just there's all kinds of things that we do in life that could, ultimately end up in, you deploying that firearm while in that seated position. Whether it could be church safety, all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. We always talk about, plausibility principle training for the things that are most probable, and then move out into the plausible. Well, the amount of time most Americans spend in vehicles and carrying in vehicles, it seems like that would fall into that probable ring, or at least, or just outside of it, into the plausible.
Yeah, definitely. For a lot of people, it's going to be more likely, than others that may not spend a lot of times in chairs around, people. But, how plausible or how probable is it in your specific life, right? So it definitely, it makes sense. Most people have to protect themselves with firearms, do so from a standing position, but that's not always the case. And so after you start to build the skills from that aspect, well, it's important to start to expand on those circumstances, maybe faster, for certain people, to that seated position. So that's kind of what, brings us to to the video tonight to be able to discuss. I don't know if you're going to notice my driveway alarm just went off, but
Oh, I was like, ice cream,
yeah,
ice cream.
I normally turn that off for the show, but forgot to turn it off. So. No.
Or I
Driveway
thought you were
alarm.
going
So
to,
we'll do a
or
different show
because
on
of our
that.
topic, I was like, oh, he's got a video of the ice cream man having to deploy a gun.
True fact. Maybe we'll pull those videos out. But like I said, it's there's a right way to do it, and ultimately there's a wrong way to do it, and it seems like there's a lot of people that do it the wrong way, and so wrong sometimes means dangerous or increasing the risk into directions we don't need to, and sometimes it means that you're unrealistic to repeat it in the same way that you trained it or practiced it because of different because of ultimately the way that brain and body work together under these kind of ambush style responses.
The biggest, like something might be sitting there going, well, Deryck, Barret, how often do you see people deploy guns from a vehicle outside of your class? The majority of the time where I see it is on Instagram or some other social media site, so somebody can show them their daily carry, and you watch them flag themselves at least 3 times most of the time.
Yeah, and that's granted we I can't even hold like inert training guns tonight, so it's
Right.
I've got a remote. I actually brought a glue stick up. I'm like, man, a glue stick would make a good choice. We got all kind of stuff. I was gonna 3D print a banana, but I just didn't get that far.
I was just gonna I was gonna go old school and get a Pop-Tart and chew it into the shape of a gun.
Right, but
That's
if it's the shape of a
solidarity.
gun, right?
Right
Let's see if I
into the
can
shape
back
of the
up a
gun.
little bit more, right? So, what Deryck's talking about, you think about somebody that is, specifically, the way that I'm setting it up now, more strong side hip, and think about that being deployed outside, of a driver's side window, right? Coming out strong side hip and really taking that shortcut, across the body to be able to deploy that gun over to that side. I just lost my microphone a little bit, so as I'm moving around, that tape just kind of wore it out just a little bit. So hopefully that's not scratching up too much, and y'all are able to hear me. But you kind of saw the laser, the laser kind of cut across my legs there, and it's that kind of stuff that we're talking about, is that people have a tendency to to shortcut their body all over the place and be comfortable or okay with the fact that they just pointed the gun at the very least at a couple of legs, right? And there are times that guns may have to get pointed at certain, even people that we don't want to point them at, or potentially unnecessarily with our body as well. But we want to avoid that stuff if we can avoid that stuff. And it doesn't have to happen, when we're talking about deploying that firearm from that seated position. It just doesn't have to happen. And yet, so many people are out there doing it. And we see it, continuously in videos. And it just, as an instructor, it kind of makes you cringe a little bit, when you see that kind of stuff, especially when you're seeing it coming from another instructor. Because that unnecessarily, people are being exposed to more risk than they have to be.
Yeah. Like in our advanced pistol handling class, the rule is the last person you want to cover with a firearm is yourself, because you are the person that has the gun that's going to save everybody else. Right? You might in the real world have to point the gun at people that aren't bad guys or bad girls to get the gun to where it can be pointed at the bad guy. in those rare situations. But the last person you want to point the gun at is yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it's almost like the analogy of the oxygen mask dropping down, from the airplane, right? If you don't help yourself, then you may not be able to help others. You may not be in a position to help others. And so if you expose yourself and take yourself out of the fight, you may not be able to help those people that you care about the most. And so it's important. And I showed you strong side hip, and now I'm afraid to move to knock the mic off again. But the same thing applies, when you're caring from the appendix position. You're only typically dealing with, one leg potentially instead of both of the legs as you're coming across. But the same thing applies is where, people come out of the holster and, take that shortest path to be able to get the gun on target.
You can show it, like, it literally, I'll tell you this, when your microphone came off, it wasn't scratchy and we could still hear you. You got a good microphone, so we can still hear you. Even if it does fall a little bit, we can still hear you. That's
good. That's good, because I may try that again. I almost put a little bit more tape on it because I was going to be moving around. Maybe during intermission, I'll go get a clip for it instead of trying to tape it onto the shirt. I can see it sticking out now a little bit, but it's unnecessary, and this is nothing new, right? And so people teach different ways to be able to mitigate that risk, and and sometimes think about somebody like in a wheelchair or sitting at the seat of the car, and so rather than having to deal, almost grabbed the wrong thing. But rather than having to deal with potentially flagging your body or hitting the steering wheel, you'll have people that teach or to practice getting it out and coming completely around that steering wheel and then dealing with that threat. Or the wheelchair, right? They come out with it and then completely trace the entire wheelchair going around the legs, and then get the gun or get your glue stick pointed properly at the threat. And so there's that side of it, right? Is where people will try to mitigate that risk, but then it's done so that is not likely repeatable in that ambush style violent facing attack where you've been surprised and your brain's just trying to get the gun out there in the fastest way, right? And so it's what we talk about in the classes is that the skills that we build have to be applicable under the context of what we're training that skill for. So in the context of that ambush style attack, we have to build skills that are actually applicable under those types of circumstances. And in order for that to be true, it has to be intuitive. It's got to be something that flows along with those body's natural reactions. Because if it's incongruent with the way that the brain works at the very basis of the fundamentals of it, if it's incongruent with that, it's not something that, is necessarily going to be repeatable. And so, that's important, right? Is that we need to find that skill and train that skill in a way that is intuitive, that flows along with those body natural reactions. You can imagine like trying to, swim against the current in the water, right? If you've got a flooded river that's overflowing its banks and you're sitting there, trying to swim against it, and you're not really going anywhere except still where the river wants to take you, right? And so if you're going to try to cross that body of water, you're going to try to cross it, you can't go against it. You got to learn to work with it. And that's the power of our body's natural reactions is that you've got to learn to work with them. And I don't know if you have different thoughts on that. Deryck and I haven't spoken about this ahead of time, but, to me, doing things like tracing steering wheels or, tracing wheelchairs or tracing the gun around your body completely in any way, is something that is, it's incongruent with the flow of the river.
Well, also the steering wheel specifically, because I was taught that, I don't know. I started teaching in early 2000, and I learned this in the 90s, tracing the steering wheel. And the why was always because you don't have enough space
right
to cross in front of your body. But now after teaching this for, I don't know, 13 years of working with Rob and you and like teaching this class and all. And I've had students that are extremely large. I've never had a student not be able to move with a gun here between the steering wheel and their chest. Now, granted, I've not worked with, some of the world's strongest men that like weigh in at, 400 pounds and have pectoral muscles out to here, but there's plenty of space. So, if you find a way that works with what the body does naturally, and then find a way that is consistent with sitting in the chair. If you get knocked down and you're on your knees and your butt's back on your heels, like crossing the legs, like there's a way to do it that's efficient and consistent and will work across more than just sitting in a chair. So that makes it easily repeatable because you're not fighting against this whole, oh my God, I need this gun. Let's follow the steering wheel. As opposed to, oh my God, I need my gun. Turn the gun 90 degrees, cause parallel to the thighs to orientation and extension. So now we're on the same page. But don't get me wrong, man. I did the whole steering wheel thing.
Me too. I mean, that's probably the first time I shot out of a car. That's how I was taught. And it was definitely widely taught, and by big name people. And and like I said, it's one of the biggest reasons it was being taught is so that you have the space to be able to work with it, and to be able to secondary for most, being able to avoid flagging yourself in the process.
Now I will say this about the big names that like the person that taught it to me was like a former operator. Maybe if you're all kitted out, like maybe, but even then, like I'm thinking about like larger students that I've had, and I mean really large students, and like they could still cross between their body. Now it might be a little bit more cumbersome with like, what you have on your plate carrier when you're kitted out, but you can still cross across that stuff. So
yeah.
But like the wheelchair, like I can think of 4 students that have shown up in class with wheelchairs, and they trained in the wheelchair, because that's how they live, and had one appendix carry. I don't want to say one strong side carry, then the other 2, like I think off the top of my head, were fanny packs. But all 4 of them, it was pretty similar. Like when we would turn them off center, like shooting off to the side, except for the appendix carry only had to cross one leg. The strong person had to cross 2 legs, and then the person that was coming from the bag would come out, get it to parallel, and then cross, depending. So sometimes it'd be one leg, the other times it'd be like basically 2 legs, but it was the same movement pattern across the board.
Yeah.
Right. Thinking, yeah. It's been a while, but since I've had a student in a wheelchair doing one, but to just try to remember like all the details. And like the cool thing about PDN is, we have stuff from the wheelchair, videos and articles on PDN. So
that is true.
Jacob, White Rabbit Consulting. Jacob, can't think of his last name. But anyway, when was the last time you did an APH class?
It's been, yeah, it's on the menu for this year.
Yeah, I think mine's been probably about 8 months now, 6 months. I did one last year. The hard part about that class is, Barret and I both, when we run the class, we like to pull a gun, a car out onto the range, so you can actually get a live rep of, presentation from the holster out of the vehicle. Obviously, we would put the windows down before they shoot, so it's not that cool, but
yeah. No,
but the other way that that if somebody like is a member of a range, or you have a private range or something, just getting a regular chair and working the chair like it's your vehicle. It's almost identical, except for if you get a chair with like arms that are like one of those camping chairs, it'll constrict you a little bit. You don't have the seat belt to deal with, but you get some good reps that way. Because I did run a class this wasn't that long ago. It was a bunch of students, pretty big class, and like 4 or 5 had taken the class.
Did I lose you? Well, let's, there he goes. Are you back?
I still hear you. I just don't
Okay,
see
good. So yeah, I lost you. I lost your feed coming in, but you're
you.
back now.
I got a little green arrow, but let's see. So what did you get? Did you hear about the chair thing? Like,
Yeah. Got the chair thing. No, I think
right.
I honestly was kind of fell at a natural pause.
Okay.
That where I think it kind of cut out. So that's really, to me, that's kind of the big things that overtly, that continue to pop up that, bring concern, from watching videos and whatnot. Obviously, there's always little pieces and that kind of stuff, but those are the two big things, is that, especially the unnecessarily flagging of the body, right? And so, that's avoidable, and so, the way that we teach you how to work, with your glue stick or your banana, when you're working around those vehicles, working around those chairs, what Deryck was talking about a second ago, is that after the gun comes up, out of the holster, ultimately, you've got to make sure that it's being turned away from the body. And so, we'll go back to strong side hip for a second. So you can picture, coming out of the holster, strong side hip, you're wanting to, as you're, reaching for that gun, you're moving your leg out of the way. So as you begin to bring it out, there's not going to be any flagging of that leg. And so we train students that, when they reach, they also move the leg. Same thing applies with appendix carry. You'd, open the legs up, if they're not already open, to make sure you're clearing that path. But after the gun comes straight out of that holster, it ends up, we're trying to get it oriented in such a way that you can trace the gun across your hips. So rather than flagging your legs, you're rotating the gun 90 degrees and then rotating the gun 90 degrees. So can you demonstrate that, Deryck, again?
Right. So you're gonna.
Yeah.
I don't.
I guess you can. Yeah.
So I'm gonna come straight up. I'm gonna rotate the gun 90, rotate the gun 90, and then I'm gonna cross parallel to my thighs until I get to where the threat is over here. If I have to go off to the side. So then as I'm coming back in, the whole reholstering thing is how we do it in class is a little bit different, because we're not going to sit there and reholster in the car. And I tell my students, right, we do it admin for safety on the range, but in the real world, you might not be getting out of the car, because in our classes, I always have them get out of the car and then reholster as an admin safety issue. But if you're staying in the car and the police show up, just put it on the dash, put it on the floor. You don't sit there and try to reholster in the car. But it's literally come straight up, turn it 90, cross parallel to the thighs, and then to extension.
Right. So it's very simple, and it's taught in two separate moves, where you're rotating at 90 degrees, onto its side, or turning and turning, right? You'll hear the vernacular we'll use in teaching that kind of stuff, but it's taught in steps, but then put into a fluid motion. And so as you develop and build out those skills, you're learning how to, in an intuitive way, a way that works with those body's natural reactions, to be able to get the gun around the body in a safe way, right? And so anytime we have to cross our body, that's what we're, that's the important part of what we're doing with it. And the same thing would apply, you'd be just knocked down, getting the gun out on your knees for that matter. And so it applies in all kinds of different situations. But anytime you're crossing that body, there's no reason to flag the gun across you, right? As I did with the laser gun a second ago, or at least with the laser remote, the second ago, is that it's unnecessary to do so. So why do it? Why expose yourself to the additional risk?
And then, so I think I heard you say it. If you're strong side carry, when you start the rep, make sure you're sitting there with your legs spread apart a lot more than you normally would. So you get in the habit of moving that leg in to make space to to get a good grip of the gun. And if you're an appendix carrier, sit with your legs really tight together and on your first rep, spread your legs so you can really access that gun as you lean back, because you want to build that pattern, that motor pattern of, hey, if I got to get my gun, I got to make sure my legs are out of the way, be it opening them or moving them off to one side.
Yeah, we exaggerate it so you get in the habit of doing it. You know,
Yep.
because it's if you think about it, you know, if you're sitting in an automobile and you're carrying the gun on the front of your body, you may not have to move your legs or might have to move them much in that situation. But that's certainly change, you know, sitting in a chair, you know, in the restaurant or something like that, depending on what kind of chair that you're sitting in, right? It could change if you're sitting next to other people and you don't have the leg space that you may have, you know, when you're sitting solo. And so it's important to build that into the skill, is that when you're reaching, you're moving it, which means, you know, prior to the moving it, we want to exaggerate it completely being in the way, so that you get that good rep in of making sure it is out of the way prior to the gun coming from the holster.
As well as your body's natural reactions, right? Like if you sitting there with your legs apart and you're an appendix carrier, and you're just normal, you naturally driving your car or sitting in the car with your legs spread apart, because notoriously men do this. We sit there with our knees spread, and something happens over here. I'm gonna be like this, and I'm probably gonna close my legs as I start shifting my body away from whatever it is that startled me from that side, and vice versa. So I'm gonna have to get back to opening those hips back up, or opening those legs back up so I can access the gun. Same with strong side. If it's over here and I'm a right-handed carrier, I'm probably going to really lean this way. And now I really have to start and make room for that gun, to access that gun on that right-hand side.
Yep, absolutely. But if you don't build those pieces into the training, you know, then your brain's always going to default to the, you know, the what it's has worked on the most, right? Or what has worked on the most in the context of that, what the strongest neural pathway is. And so, you know, if you don't build that in each rep, then all of a sudden you end up starting to, you know, point the gun at things that we don't want to point the gun at if you ended up in that type of situation.
Or even worse, you don't practice it, you don't train it, and then all of a sudden you need it, and then you go grabbing that gun, and you have the seatbelt, and you have like an armrest and everything else, and now you're jamming your hand down in there, and you're like pulling it, and God forbid you lose your gun, like you lose your keys down the side of the chair, because you haven't practiced making space.
Yeah, definitely so. So it's important to put that into the practice. And this, if you're going to get out and practice this stuff, I mean, obviously we're just kind of touching the surface on how to do it. And so, you know, it wouldn't be best to go out there, you know, live fire and start practicing at the gun range, right? You know, work, I mean, in fact, you know, kind of joke around with the glue stick for the video tonight, but you could use anything for that matter that is, you know, able to point, you know, at those body parts so that you can force yourself to figure out how to, you know, to get it around it. And so you can use the inert guns or, you know, the SIRT pistols. I was going to bring that up tonight too, but of course it looks like a real one, so can't have that out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if you have like one of those laser cartridges that you can put into an empty gun, like if you empty out your gun, clear it,
Yeah.
verify it's clear, drop one of those little laser cartridges in it. I think a lot of them you can turn it on so it's like permanently on, and you can see that laser will tell you if you're pointing it at yourself.
Yeah, definitely so. So it's just, you know, it's definitely one of the things that, as we're sitting, you know, in the winter months, is that you can start to get an understanding of and build those slow reps on the inside of a nice, warm, and cozy household.
Another cool thing about this topic is if you guys obviously you know what PDN is, head over to the main site, and in the little search just put in vehicle. And when you put in vehicle, it's going to come up with, you know, defensive shooting in a vehicle, carrying firearms in a vehicle. And a bunch of them are videos. So you will see, you know, Rob going step by step
Yeah.
through the presentation steps. And I think he even has some out there if you're the passenger, right? Because many a time, you know, we're like going somewhere and we're taking my wife's car and I'm just not in the mood. I'm just like, here, you just drive. And, you know, then she's probably not carrying her gun since she's with me, so it would still be me. So there's presentation from the passenger side too, I believe, or as a passenger in the vehicle responding to a threat.
Definitely so. And some of the videos on the Personal Defense Network .com page are premium videos. They are behind a paywall with an annual membership. But because you're tuning in tonight, there is a link at personaldefensenetwork.com/training dash talk. Let me double check that. Yep. go.personaldefensenetwork.com/training dash talk. And that will give you a very strong discount for your membership at $1.49 for that first year. And so it really doesn't get any cheaper than that. So thanks for tuning in. And PDN wants to thank you for that. And so be sure to jump over and check that out. I'm going to see if I can drop this in the comments as well.
And I believe that our support staff at PDN actually put it in the description on the YouTube video. And I think there's also a link on that one too for a free checklist, a personal defense checklist. A link that's over there too on the description of the YouTube page.
Okay, yeah, they sent us that. So let's see. I'll try to drop a bunch of those in there. So yeah, free home defense checklist and the premium membership. Let's see. I'll make sure that's in the comments there.
Yeah, while you were doing that, I just went over and did the whole put the vehicle in the search bar. There's a whole bunch of them, and like using vehicle as arrest, using vehicle as for bullet protection, shooting inside a vehicle, covering concealment, responding as a passenger in a vehicle. So a lot of good stuff out there if you just put in vehicle in the search bar.
All right, I'm dropping this in the comments now, just in case it did not show up on all the descriptions.
All right, cool. Yeah, I don't know about you, but while you're doing that, like if I have a class and it's my regular old intuitive defensive shooting class, if it's a return student and they've been through the class multiple times, a lot of times I will actually start the class out, and the new students will be doing extend touch press, and the people in the chair will be doing extend touch press, but presenting from the holster in a chair. Like they start out presenting straight to the front, obviously, but as we get more into the day and further along, and the rest of the class is further along, then I'll start moving them around where, strong side to the target, weak side to the target, that kind of stuff.
No, yeah, absolutely. It's, obviously it's best to provide what your students need, in the course. I just had a, defensive handgun class this past weekend, this past Saturday, and we kind of go into it knowing most of what we're going to teach. Well, that kind of got completely, I'm not gonna say derailed, but it kind of got completely, redirected, where most of the entire afternoon was spent very different than what it normally looks like, during that course. Same thing, Sunday, I was working with a student that had, more athletic ability, than a lot of people coming out of the class. So I was able to push him a whole lot more during the carbine course, and challenge him, a whole lot more than a lot of the students coming out to it, and add additional content and whatnot.
That's cool. Speaking of carbine, like since everybody they're watching us on PDN. I'm sure if you're watching us, most likely you follow what Rob Pincus is up to, and his handgun company, Avidity Arms, is now. If you have an Avidity Arms pistol, they're coming out with a limit. Is it a limited run of rifles, or is it going to be something regular? I'm not 100% sure.
I think it's going to be something regular.
All right, but early on, right now, they're taking pre-orders for serial number matching. So if you own an Avidity Arms PD10 and you have serial number 101 and you'd like a rifle to match, you can actually go there and pre-order it and say, hey, I want my matching serial number on my rifle. So you can get matching pistol and rifle from Avidity Arms. if that's something you're into. Like I know I'm gonna get mine done. I'm pretty sure you will too, right, Barret?
So I still haven't gotten my yeah, I have two PD10s, but I still haven't gotten the serial number I'm after.
Oh,
Uh,
right. So you just have I have three PD10s. Like I have one is my serial number, the other is the serial number right after that serial number. That I was going to give my wife. Or actually, no, we have four PD10s in the house. Then we have our Recondo team building event of my limited edition uh, uh, Tiger Stripe camo, and then my wife has her her specially serialized one too. So
there you go.
yeah.
Awesome. All right, so I did just drop those links in both the YouTube and Facebook feeds. But yeah, check out the free home defense checklist. You know, click the link, probably drop in your email address and have it emailed directly to you, or join for the premium access for $1.49. You have anything else you want to discuss about the presentation from Holster tonight?
No, if you're gonna do it, if you're like, hey, this is something I really want to try, find an instructor. There's plenty of us that do our advanced pistol handling class, right? Is it is now the new because just so everybody knows, like there's instructors that have been with Rob for a long time, like Barret, myself, and then we have some newer instructors that have been around for like 4 years or so, and we sort of broken it up. Is still the advanced pistol handling, right? And then unorthodox shooting position is different. So advanced pistol handling is where they would have the shooting from a vehicle and seated and everything else. Or no, that's unorthodox shooting.
Flip it around.
All right, yeah, I got it backwards. Because
Yep.
see, I still run my classes advanced pistol handling, and when everybody gets there, I just sort of pick and choose. If I notice everybody's getting tired doing one thing, I'll move over to the other side. Um,
Yeah.
and
And
if you can't do that, go check out the videos at PDN. Get an inert, cert, rubber gun, something, and practice there. If you have and then after you do some dry runs, if you have a range that allows you to do it, you can get a camping chair and do it from there. Go step by step, making sure that you're getting the right movement patterns down. Don't just go out there and pull out the little beepy beepy thing and try going to town and see what your fastest time is. Like
yeah.
step out of context, do it step by step, and get the right motor pattern built so that you're consistent and efficient.
Absolutely, and yeah, my parking lot violence 360 course. Any of my 360 courses have a force on force component to it, but that will be part of that class that I'll have out as well. Location, don't have dates yet, but should be in the Los Angeles, California area. Be one location, Las Vegas, Nevada. I've got confirmed with a host for that one, Mississippi, and working on something on the East Coast right now as well. So you're coming out on the tour in any of those locations, so I'll be teaching that during the classes.
Now, is that the class I helped you with in Louisiana one time when I was like a role player and stuff for you? That was
A
that one, right?
tweaked version of it, kind of
Okay.
an evolved version, but yes.
Yeah, yeah, that was a cool class. The 360 classes are always cool. So
Yeah,
I've
I'll
done a
have
couple with you, a couple different ones with you. So I wasn't sure which one that one was.
Yep, I'll have more of those on the calendar for this year. So, been getting a lot more requests for them. So, I'm going to start putting more of them on the training calendar. So, I'll have that out on the tour this year, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I was just it popped up on my phone. The phone like pops up with memories for some things, and
Yeah.
like it was literally a bunch of pictures of the old Bearco 4 Runner, people shooting out of it on the range, and then people shooting non-lethal training ammo inside your old building.
Oh yeah, they
Yeah,
definitely got some use with that Forerunner.
yeah,
Definitely
yeah,
so. Next week is SHOT Show,
yep.
and so as you mentioned already, Rob is already launching the rifle from Avidity Arms and a long slide version of the PD10, a PD10 and 30 super carry. So 30 super carry, excuse me. If you haven't
Yeah.
seen the videos out on that, definitely check it out. 30 super carry from Federal. is ultimately a little bit smaller than 9mm, but it's designed to have similar ballistics with that. But it means you can kind of carry more rounds in the gun, with slightly lighter, felt recoil and whatnot. So the potential to be able to shoot it faster. But he's dropping that. I'm sure that there'll be lots of new guns and gadgets that will be running around. If you already know about something that's super cool, I'll be in Vegas next week. You think I should go check it out, do some videos with it or not? Be sure to drop that in the comments, because there's all kind of things I may not be paying attention to right now, but I could probably swing by and get some content on it or check it out.
Well, the super carry thing is pretty cool because do you remember last year we were with the guys from Avidity Arm, Rob and Joe and those guys, and they were actually, Joe was talking about it. So
Yeah,
they actually came to market pretty fast. Like Joe and those guys, the engineers there did a lot of fast work on the 30 super carry.
they did, but it's at least fast to the public, right? They've
Right.
been
Yeah.
working on it behind the scenes for a good bit.
Yeah.
Definitely
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
And
So,
we will be back in February here, probably actually pretty quick. We had to delay the January show just with all the holidays and some other commitments and whatnot. But we'll be back pretty quickly in February, first Thursday of the month, for Training Talk. New great topics. I'll probably look at some of the stuff from SHOT Show. Love to have y'all back on the show. And other than that, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Always a pleasure being able to sit here and discuss and share with Deryck all kinds of information out to those who are tuning in.
absolutely.
All right, Deryck, good to see you, brother.
You too, man.